I thought just to give some context into the videos that I make, I'd share some of my biases by ranking which teams I love the most to which teams I dislike the most. And just to add context to even some of this video, let me get my favorites and least favorites out of the way first. So, my very favorite team is the Vancouver Canucks. Yeah, I've always been a Canucks fan since I've been watching hockey. The first thing I watched of hockey was the Queen dropping the puck between the Sharks and the Canucks, and basically my opinion there just became, what do the two guys taking the face off look like? And it was Mike Ricci and it was Marcus Naslund, and I was like, that guy, Marcus Naslund. And that's basically how I chose my favorite team. So yeah. My dad, he grew up in Calgary actually. So I've always still, even though I like the Canucks, I know they're kind of a rival. I never really saw it that way when I was really little. I started watching in 2003. I guess I was seven. Turning, I was seven because it's 2002 and '03 season actually is what it was, and so I was seven, turning eight. But I wasn't really someone who cheered for the Flames. I put the Flames in teams I like. I'll just do that right now. Uh, but I still did not like the Oilers. My dad's dislike for the Oilers rubbed off on me. They are my absolute least favorite team. They always have been. And another thing, since about 2012, because I like the Canucks, I love guys like Jovanovski. I love guys like Roberto Luongo. When Jovanovski joined the Panthers, they became a team I heavily, heavily cheered for. And I they're my second team basically. So I've loved them ever since. And to see what I saw, like yeah, like it's interesting that I've loved them ever since. Guys like Barkey have come in. Barkov's probably my favorite player right now in the league. Him and JT Miller, love JT Miller. Um, but just to see that team. And even if Barkey leaves, I think I'll always love Florida second. Like I don't think that'll ever change. At this point it'll always be Vancouver and Florida that are my favorite teams. Vancouver obviously always first, but I just I'm so happy about what just happened, and you could see it right away. Like teams I love, Florida wins the Stanley Cup. Teams I like, my least favorite team being the Oilers, they lose the Stanley Cup. It was close. Oh man, it was too close for comfort, but yeah, it was. I definitely enjoyed the final, as you can see. I enjoyed it in the end. So yeah, that was very good. I'm not. I love McDavid. I'll say that. I do really like McDavid. He just happened to go to the Oilers. I do feel bad for him that he didn't win. But other than that, there's part of me that does feel a bit for Stuart Skinner as well. And maybe a few guys on the team not named Kane and Nurse, and even Drysaitel. I think I was put off by his comments about Post is not good goaltending. That was just such a bad comment. Just so lame and petty, and just like didn't even really work because it was his own, shots that went off the post. It's just like, but I mean, I can forgive him for that. I feel good that he didn't win this year, but if Drysdale goes on and wins, I'll forgive him for that. It's all good. But with that out of the way, those are like my favorite, my least favorite. I threw the Flames in there because I don't really mind the Flames. I mean, what did we play them in 2004 and 2015 that I saw? I think that's it in the playoffs. To me, like the Flames, they're the Flames. I don't mind them. I like them. I've had that kind of influence from my dad, but still, I like him. I like him. I wouldn't say I really like them though. But yeah, let's go through these in alphabetical order now. We got the Anaheim Ducks, and for a long time, I did not like the Ducks pretty much at all. The Kessler, Getzlav. Well, the way Kessler left, I always thought was like, I don't really want him to win. I don't want to have him see success after he left Vancouver in that way. Not that I mind Kessler now. Like looking back, it's like he was a player that I loved. But him in his, Getzlov, Perry, Ducks days, they were not a team that I wanted to cheer for at all. I would have put them in dislike. But now I feel a lot more indifferent about the Ducks. They're fine. Like, that's just kind of how I feel. They're fine. Things have changed enough there. Whereas things have not changed enough in Boston. And as a Canucks fan, we would imagine that I'm not a big Boston fan at all. Boston is going right into this, like, 2011 and still having Brad Marchand. They're still down there. I will say I've always loved and had an extreme respect for Patrice Bergeron. I think there's a couple good things about them winning in 2011. You can barely think that. Uh, One is that Rafi Torres did not win, and it's picking some positives. But another thing is I do think, and it would have been better another year for sure. I would have loved to see the Canucks win and leave Bergeron cupless. But another thing would be that Bergeron, I'm glad he won at some point. Looking back on his career, he's someone who really deserved it. And so that part is something to take away that's okay about that, I guess. But yeah, anyway, uh, not a big Boston fan. And, I feel like, Getzlav and Perry and Kessler are all gone from the Ducks. If Marchand goes, because, I mean, Lucic is gone and stuff like that. If Marchand leaves the Bruins, I don't know if you know, be as much in the I dislike Boston camp. But yeah, that's just kind of how it is right now. Buffalo, I would put them in indifferent also. I'm a little indifferent to Buffalo. Like again, they're fine. They're they've suffered along with the Canucks from the 1970 expansion. We both have not won cups, so hopefully that changes with the Canucks. And if Buffalo does that after, that's great with me. I'd love to see them stop suffering. But again, Boston, I'm kind of indifferent to. Carolina, I would say I really like Carolina. Let's go here. I'll put Carolina in teams I really like. One of my favorite Cup finals was 2006 because the Oilers lost. No, it wasn't even because of that. It's because Cam Ward. I actually met him. I played hockey against him when I was a little kid, and he was like part of the Rebels. And I saw him in Jersey City, and he signed a Carolina mini stick for me. Like, and so I always looked up to him because he had been drafted by them. I knew he'd been drafted by Carolina, so we wanted to get something that would make sense for him to sign. And I still have that. And so seeing him like in his rookie season, pretty much just going and winning the Stanley Cup, that for me that was amazing. I always love Cam Ward, and so I still really like Carolina. Um, it, they'd probably might. You'll see here because I'll move them around a little bit. Like I'd still probably put Anaheim maybe ahead of Buffalo now. Like I don't know. So I don't know why are they ahead of Buffalo? Maybe just because I like that Anaheim Ducks logo. I don't even know. You know what? I'll put Buffalo ahead. Yeah, I'll put Buffalo ahead. Buffalo, I feel like I do sympathize a little bit more with them than I do the Ducks. So yeah, I would put Buffalo ahead of them. But I'm still kind of indifferent, really. Like it's not much. But you'll probably see that Carolina will end up here as my fifth favorite team. And then from there, I'm not really sure where this will go. I know my bottom ones, I know my top ones, my top five, and from there, I guess I'm just kind of going on the fly. One that's definitely below average is I don't know if I would say dislike at this moment, but Chicago is definitely below average for me. And I don't know. I mean, there was a lot of like I'm not a big fan of Chicago because I'm a Canucks fan, and they kept, beating us every year until we finally had Burrows score on them and slay the dragon. And at some point, I want to do a top 10 my favorite goals I've ever seen. But I mean, spoiler alert for that. Like, we know what that's going to be as a Canucks fan that has not seen the '94 run, sadly. But anyway, yeah, I don't know. Chicago, they've had all this like horrible things that were, happening in the organization that really soured me to them. They're already a rival, but I never really like even back in 2013 when they were against Boston. Like Boston was way worse to me at that point. I was like, you know what? I don't even know if I mind Chicago that much. And was I cheering for Tampa in 2015? Yeah, but even against LA, I was like always hoping Chicago would be LA too. So you'll see how LA is probably down here as well. I don't think I'll put LA in the dislike thing. I know I'm going out of order here, but I'd probably put them underneath the Hawks. Mm, actually, right now maybe above the Hawks because that I don't know that scandal stuff really soured me, and I know a lot of things have changed there since, but I don't know. It's anyway. It just still you think about it when you think of Chicago, and it's like, yeah. Um, let's see, Colorado. Um, Colorado. I like Nathan McKinnon. I like the team. Kale McCarr is cool. I don't know if I'd put them above average, but probably put them ahead of Buffalo. I'm kind of indifferent to them, but I mean I like some of the players, and yeah. Columbus, I would also put indifferent, probably at the very bottom of it. I don't like their logo very much, but the rest of the team, it's like, yeah, it's Columbus. I was cheering for them back when they had Bobrovsky and Panarin, and they were going and sweeping the Bolts. That was just fun to see, just because the Bolts were this amazing team. Not because I don't like the Bolts. In fact, you'll see me probably put them higher. But just because it was like, wow, what is happening right now? It was like this amazing underdog story. So back then it would have been, I don't know, maybe they would have been above average, I guess. But I don't know. Right now it's like, it just feels like they're kind of whatever, you know? Dallas recently, I'd probably put them behind Calgary. I like Dallas at this point. Although I don't know if Pavelski's coming back, but I like guys like Rupe Hintz, love Rupe Hintz, and Robertson, and yeah, I mean, I don't know, it's a good team. I would say I like them. I was definitely, I think out of the West, I was hoping for them more than pretty much everyone in the playoffs. Except for the Jets, I guess they went out pretty fast. You'll see that in a bit. I'm getting ahead of myself here. Detroit, I like Detroit a lot, and I put Detroit ahead of Calgary actually. I do like Detroit. I don't know. Just to me, I just yeah. Some of these I don't really have an explanation. I've just always kind of liked Detroit since I was younger. At a certain point, I'm sure they were my second favorite team, and love Yzerman. In fact, Yzerman and Sakic, and Naslin, they were like my favorite guys growing up, the 19s. So yeah, always liked them pretty much since then. I mean, they've had Lidstrom. Lidstrom was great, and yeah, there's just a lot that I really liked about Detroit history and stuff like that. And so, um, yeah, that would be. I think they're my favorite original six team as well. So. Minnesota Wild, and this is kind of an interesting one. And I really started liking them because of their jerseys, and I just started cheering for them based on that. Minnesota's probably become my third favorite team since then. Let's move that over. So yeah, I love Minnesota. I'd say I really like them. Montreal, again, I'm kind of indifferent. I'll probably put them ahead of Colorado. I tend to lean Canadian in a lot of ways, but I know up in Canada, a lot of people were saying like, "Oh, you got to cheer for the Oilers. They're Canada's team now," and it's like, mm, no, I don't need to. But I usually will have more of a, I guess some of these other Canadian teams, sometimes I'll even cheer for them above, like let's say Calgary and Detroit are against each other. I would probably cheer for Calgary over Detroit, even though I might like Detroit more, just because Detroit has more Stanley Cups. They have more wins. They also have Joe Veleno, which kind of actually makes them a little bit hard to cheer for. So maybe I would take them down a bit. I'll leave them there, but I just thought of that and was like, yeah, Joe Veleno. But yeah, Nashville, I would say I like as well. I'd probably put them just ahead of Dallas, maybe behind Calgary there. The Devils, I'm super biased in this one. I hate the Devil, and so anything that says Devils, I'm just like, no. So I wouldn't actually put them in dislike because I'll say below average. I'll put them ahead of the Kings, but in general, just as a team name, I just don't like it at all, and so that's my super bias of my most biased list anyway, right? So yeah, Islanders. again, I'm pretty indifferent to them. I'd probably put them ahead of Buffalo and ahead of Colorado and ahead of Montreal. I mean, should they be above average? No. I'll probably put them there. Um, but I don't know. I tend to usually prefer them in some ways over others. Rangers, I actually don't mind the Rangers. I'll put them above average even. Rangers are cool. So yeah, Ottawa I'll also put in above average. Um, I would love to see Ottawa do well as well, and get in the playoffs and do a little run. Yeah, I'm big on Ottawa. Another team that I'm actually quite big on is Philly. And I'll put them ahead of Detroit there. I've always loved Philly. I don't know why. Something about being jumping on the 2010 bandwagon and never jumping off. Uh, just there's something about Philly that I've always really liked. I was cheering for them quite early on in the 2010 playoffs in the East. I think once they did that thing to the Bruins where they reverse sweeped them, I was like all in, and I was like, I'm so cheering for you. And so yeah, and ever since then, I've just always kind of Phillies had a kind of a favorable position in my eyes. I was really hoping they would win that against the Hawks, and I mean just yeah in general. Pittsburgh. I've never been a big Crosby fan at all. Although I will admit I I also want to do a top 10 players. Right now I think Crosby would probably even rank 5th all time in who's the best players of all time. That's what I'm thinking when I do that video. So I do admit he's like an amazing player, but I don't know. I think there's just something about when he came into the league with Ovechkin, and Ovechkin was like laying people out with these hits, and he was electrifying everything with his goals. And Crosby, and people have said that he didn't have much protection out there, and and he was targeted a lot. And so I don't know. I don't really remember that. All I remember is that Crosby was like looked like he was gonna cry all the time, and I was like, that's not who I want to cheer for. I want to cheer for this guy who's throwing around hits and all that stuff. And so Crosby definitely diminished in my eyes, and for a while I was really not a Crosby fan at all. Now I'm a little bit, more like, okay, I'm respecting him. Like he's one of the best players that I've ever played in the NHL. But still, I've always kind of rooted against him, and so I'm putting them ahead of Boston, but Pittsburgh is definitely a team that I dislike, and it didn't help that they kept winning 2016 and 2017 either. Um, but that's just it. The Sharks. I would put the Sharks in teams that I like. Right now, they're just kind of in. It feels like no man's land. I'll put them just above the Stars there, between them and Nashville. But yeah, the Sharks generally they have a really cool logo. Their original jerseys are some of the best. I had a hockey bag that had the teal Sharks original logo and stuff like that, and the bag was teal as well. But yeah, I feel like Seattle. I feel like I'm very indifferent to Seattle as well. To me, they're just kind of meh. I'm trying to think of where to put them. Probably maybe just below Montreal. Yeah, I would probably say that. Yeah, they're just kind of a meh team. They're just kind of there to me, and but they're also not a team that's below average or that I dislike. They might in the future become a big rival for the Canucks, but right now it's just kind of they're in the same division. Yeah. The Blues. I think the Blues I'd put above average. I'd put them even ahead of Ottawa. I really like the Blues, and I I was definitely cheering for them in 2019. But even before then, I usually really like to see the Blues do well as long as it was not against Minnesota, which did happen. So yeah, there's that. Teams that I like, I would put Tampa in that. Maybe maybe ahead of the Sharks. I'll probably put them ahead of the Sharks. Love Hedman. Love Stamkos. Kucherov is not someone that I particularly love at all. He's kind of like a I don't know. He's done some interesting stuff anyway. I remember him like just jumping at someone's head in a game. I think it was in that Columbus series where they were getting swept up, and it was like, who's this guy? But I I don't know, like that's not going to diminish it for me. I love Hedman, and like there's so many guys who have, done some really dirty stuff, even on the Canucks, even on the Panthers, right? So anyway, so that's not going to diminish the Lightning in my eyes. When it's Marchand though, it's personal. That's Marchand is it's very low. He's done so much stuff. It's unbelievable. He's cleaned up a lot, but still, it's just like it's been so personal, especially against the Canucks back in the day. It was just I can't, I can't cheer for it. I can't cheer for him at all. So there's that. Toronto, I would say below average. I'll put them ahead of the Devils, I think. But Toronto, I've kind of been like not wanting them to ever win because if they win, then now who's in the spot of like you've never won in how long in your existence? you know, because the Canucks, they would be the team next that had not won in the longest amount of time, and Buffalo as well would have been. But still, it's just like I really don't want that to happen. Like I don't want the Leafs to win and then for the Canucks to be the next team. And it's like, oh. So if the Canucks win, then I'll probably be more favorable toward Toronto. They've suffered a lot. They really have. It's kind of crazy to me that they hadn't won a round for so long until they beat Tampa last season, or is the season that just finished now last season? But the season before, anyway. But yeah, it's quite it's yeah, I don't know. It's quite something for me. Just to think about them not winning in 1960 since 1967, and then how they would be putting the Canucks into that dishonorable position if they did win before them. So Utah, I feel like I just don't know. I probably would put them in above average just because I guess I'm kind of interested in what they're gonna do. That's probably the only reason is just because it's like, what are they gonna do with this team and this branding, and how are they gonna do during the season? But it's also, I don't know, if they don't come up with a team name. Okay, yeah, let's assume that because that's what it's looking like. If they don't come up with a team name before the season, obviously the branding, that's different, because that takes longer with the jerseys and all that stuff. But if they don't come up with a name, if they don't actually choose a name and announce it before the season starts, and we're just calling them Utah Hockey Club, then I'd actually put them in like dislike. Like I'd put them here. And so let's just assume that that's the case. So if they come up with a name, and I guess it depends what that name would be. I love Venom personally. Venom would be my choice. Yeti, it's fine. It seems to be what everyone likes. Um, I'd still go Venom. Mammoth, I don't know. I could do it, but and I didn't even remember what the other one was. So, uh, No, it wasn't Blizzard, or was it Blizzard? It could have been. Anyway, I choose Venom, but I don't know. I guess it depends on what it is. But if they do, yeah, if they're just going hockey club this season, then I'm just gonna hope they fail. Honestly, like I just think you got to give us at least a name, right? That's what I think, anyway. Vegas also is in teams I dislike. Maybe ahead of Pittsburgh. Actually, I don't know. I feel like now it's kind of like, yeah, I don't know. Vegas is just not a team that I love very much, and I think most people, especially the last couple of years, have felt the same way. I don't know if I'd even really need to explain it that much. Washington, I've always quite liked. I'd probably put them down here behind the Lightning. So yeah, again, Ovi. I always really liked Ovi. To see him win the cup in 2018 was like awesome. Like it was so awesome. It just felt so good. Felt like this year was better for me. And 2006 was better for me too. But 2018 was a year, and 2019 as well, those 2 years back to back were just it just felt really good to see those winners. You know, the Blues finally win, um, the Caps finally win with Ovi. It just was great. And then Winnipeg Jets, they would be fourth. I love the Jets, and I always just really liked. I don't know, when I was young and I had like those hockey cards, and I looked at the teams that weren't there anymore. You know, there's the Whalers, there's the Nordiques, and then the Jets. The Jets were always the team that I thought, man, if they were around, I would cheer for them. But obviously, I grew to love the Canucks a lot, and so I never would change. But I do definitely have something in my heart for the Jets. I was pretty sad when they went out the way they did this year in the playoffs, and so yeah. So those are my teams. Those are my favorites to my least favorites, and that's kind of the order there. So if you want to put numbers beside them, Edmonton 32nd, Boston 31st, and then Vancouver, my top five and stuff. So yeah, that's my order, and yeah.